Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. And so sorry, I was coming back from World Agritech myself and couldn't get back quite in time. So thanks for having me join you virtually. I'm a partner in McKinsey's Minneapolis office here in town, and I lead McKinsey's practice in digital and analytics and agriculture globally. No better place to lead that than from here in Minneapolis. And I thought I'd just give you a 2-minute bird's eye view of what we are seeing in the space to get us started. First of all, just the engagement and interest in ag tech, it's never been higher. Startups raised $26 billion last year, 15% increase from the year before. The breadth of engagement, both farmers engaging on farm, 2/3 of growers now use web or mobile devices in some part of their research and planning processes. 80% of growers use some form of digital precision or automation technology in their farming process. So on-farm engagement is high, but also across the value chain, we are seeing increasing roles of technology solutions everywhere from ag inputs in faster breeding and biological solution development platforms to downstream grain bins and smart grain management and marketing and aggregation. We are seeing hotspots of growth, often with technology powered by companies here in the region, automation, robotics, and controlled environment agriculture and in outdoor agriculture. And then we're seeing an increasing demand for traceability and trackability on the field, particularly in select value chains, like in alternative proteins and in transitions to regenerative agriculture. And we're seeing a growing market for carbon and natural capital credits in a way that really is creating imperatives for input providers, farmers, and downstream players to track and measure agricultural performance and look for variable rate and precision technologies. I would say we're still seeing a set of challenges, and I'm sure we'll talk more about these as we get into the discussion here. Many ag tech players start technology first. And so when we talk to farmers, time and again, we hear user experience in agriculture is still much lower than we see in other industries. And we have a chance to learn from others in creating omni-channel experiences, in bringing together skilled agronomists and technologists with new digital solutions. We see a fragmentation of solutions, of point solutions, and lots of new players solving individual challenges, but some fragmentation in the space. And then, we continue to see challenges in scaling, in monetizing and scaling some of the most exciting technologies that we see. All that said, I think, we've got an important year ahead. Crop prices continue to rise. We'll see inflation and supply chain challenges that will require more precision and technology. We'll see continuing labor market tightness that increases the demand for automation. And we continue to see, even as some of the more speculative investment may cool off, we continue to see real intense interest in ag tech and bringing research to market and to scale with a new level of partnerships and innovation. So we see this as a bright year to continue to grow and advance technology and automation and innovation on the field and across the value chain. And excited to talk a little bit more about that as we go.
Wonderful, thank you, David. And great that our technology is working again, right? And to have you and your thoughts as well. And great that you could join us from California. So I have a lot of very different perspectives right here, and I think we've got a great panel of just expertise of what they experience, what they look at, how they're seeing automation and digital overall. So I'll maybe just start with a softball question, because you all talked about different things in terms of what really, as you think about this space, like what really excites you overall in terms of the potential and the future with digital automation, how it transforms, right, food and agriculture overall. So Marc, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. All right, we got a live one. Good. Oh, thanks. Good question. I think what excites me, to be brief, is on the farm, I'm most excited about harnessing data and then being able to process it to drive very fast decisions on farm. And decisions that actually work, and ones that in hindsight you would say that was the right decision. I'll be honest, I don't know if we're quite there yet across the spectrum, but that's what I'm most excited about. Those are going to be revenue generating decisions. Those are going to be huge time saver decisions. So that's what excites me.
So when we talk about data, back in 1985, I developed a system, an electronic system background. I developed a system for a lumber poultry company that managed the ventilation. It weighed birds, weighed the water, weighed the feed, and sent it back to the office with a 300 baud modem. Who knows what that is? We got some people out there. Okay. So when we talk about early technology, bringing that information back to the office is a key thing for us.
Right now?
Today, with all of our systems all around the world,
No, I don't think so.
they talk to us every day. We control them from here. We can shut them off if we're not paid. It's really cool. And works really well also. And so we collect a lot of information. We collect obviously the number of times they use our machine. Basically, we get paid for every time they use it. We collect about 150 different data points on our machine of performance. And that is brought back to our system that we call our attribute data analyzer creatively. And we can determine how our machines are performing and usually see them starting to not perform as well before our customers even know that they're having an issue.
So I would agree with what's been said already, and kind of what I talked about before, the switch from manual things or cell sheets to digitization. But one company I'll share that is exciting and goes back to talk I think this morning, where she talked about how our small and medium-sized farms throughout the developing world changing, and what is their role, and how are they going to advance into the future. So I'll just cite one really cool startup that's actually out of India called Toolzilla. They're using digital in a different way, where they're not using digitization of how we think about it from a data perspective. They're using video, they're using e-commerce to help mechanize smallholder farms throughout India. And I want to say there are like 120 million smallholder farms or something. So they're utilizing this technology that is continually moving forward to actually help these farmers move much more into this world where they are modernized, they're able to use and access better inputs and create more value for themselves. So I think that's a really interesting use case of technology.
That's a great example. I remember them well from the Tech Stress program. David, did you hear the question?
I did, and I think my answer is I've been excited to see the way we are seeing technology solutions tackle old problems in new ways. And one of my favorite examples is the work Centera is doing right here in town. If you think about scouting, we've had scouting is an age-old challenge for growers. How do I know what's going on in my field before a problem becomes so serious that I can't do anything about it? And so the idea of using imagery plus machine learning and translating that to insights to react sooner, faster, I think that's really exciting. And I can point to similar solutions in smart grain bins. I can point to similar solutions in soil sampling and soil testing. These are areas where for the longest time farmers have struggled to create some level of automation. And now, the combination of cheaper, faster ways to gather images with better, stronger machine learning and analytics lets us make decisions quickly.
A great example of this Centera story is fantastic, right? The analytics, right, that they're doing around the different imaging opportunities, right, from satellite to drone to you name it, right? How they process that and turn out right those quicker solutions that Marc alluded to as well in terms of getting that right decision a lot quicker than we used to in the past. I'm going to open up the questions because I've got a handful of them, but I want to get to the audience here as well. What questions do you have for this panel? Or what's burning right in your mind around digital and automation opportunities in the food and agricultural space?
Hello. So I've got a question about kind of small and medium farms and operations. Obviously, if you've got all very big successful operation and you can automate things, you get a lot of the efficiencies and the promise of the early technology. But for these medium-sized and smaller farms that are looking to grow and really kind of have to thrive off of automation and really could benefit the most on a kind of a per-hour basis, where do you see some of these efficiencies getting to a point of affordability for these kinds of operations, of which there are much more than the mega businesses?
Anybody want to take that step?
Sure. So I'm going to take a crack at it from a robotics standpoint, if that sounds good. So from a robotics standpoint, for automation, as we see it proliferating, one of the things that has been a huge barrier has been cost. And it's not only for small and medium-sized farms, it's also for larger farms. There has been some incredible technological advancement in different crop robotics, different strawberry pickers, all sorts of different things. And the problem has been, again, the bill of materials for the actual robot, so that you're charging 100 grand for something, and you need several of them. I think we are at the cusp of seeing that change. We're starting to see a lot of more, and you probably know even more than I do about this, but like we're starting to see a lot more really affordable, quality, lower cost robotics, which is really exciting for us to see. Like we have an investment called EarthSense, which is planting cover crops and is actually quite affordable. And that is one of the big reasons we invested in them, because that is the barrier to entry for small and medium farms.
Okay, so if I could slide this to just a little bit different than farms. So today the complexity of robots is getting reduced. Today we have on our milling machines, we have a robot that feeds 2 machines. We have about $750,000 to get that robot in functioning and everything. It drove us to say there's got to be a better way. Today, we are developing a robot that we intend to be able to put into a shop, and we're looking at the very smallest shops, one-man shops, where they can put this in at no cost, and they pay us for usage. And so when you look at that, going from $750,000 for a system, we're intending to be able to pay by the part the robot can help make. So it's a
Robots as a service.
robots as a service. Remember, we lease. Everything we do, we develop a product concept of lease. And it's not just straight X a month. It's going to produce something for you. And every time it produces something for you, people get paid for it.
It's a model that I think we've seen starting with hardware of Silicon Valley at IoT hardware. We started seeing a ton of hardware as a service, and now we are seeing robots as a service versus just purchasing.
I agree. As a service, on the same point, we're looking for solutions. Oftentimes startups try to prove themselves crops like yours. That's not where I look. Unless you can we're likely not interested until you can prove it here. There are a lot of technologies that work in vineyards that do not work in cornfields.
I just second that. And I have watched companies that try to go too big, major dollars invested, and they're just trying to start and fail because of it.
That's a great point. David, anything to add from your end?
The only thing I'd say, like, as we think about, smaller operations, part of the challenges are, smaller operations need simpler solutions, and the focus early on data interoperability is important. If you have a large operation, you may have somebody who's dedicated to cleaning data and aligning across systems, and can take the time to onboard in lots of different solutions. If you have a smaller operation, the solutions need to be plug and play. And so what I look for, and when we're advising investors and strategics, we look for technologies that have started from the grower pain point, have built the user interface that makes sense, and then have aligned and created connectivity across multiple common sources of input data so that a solution is plug and play and ready to go. And I'm still surprised at how few actually start there.
Great input. I think we have another question.
So I think the interest in food ag sector of this room has been in it for a long time, but and has been investing in it for a while. But the rest of the world sort of figured out that it got hot, right? Being a pandemic, when everyone realized that food is essential, and I think the investment space became hot, and money started to flow in there. David kind of touched on this in the end of his talk. What pressures are changing. Inflation is going up, right? That would cause if inflation goes up, in the venture world, people start to pull back on higher risk and venture investments. With those pressures, right? Plus global pressures plus higher interest rates, you anticipate a change. What's your appetite to ventures to fund to lend money to companies with the changes that are coming down the road?
I'll take a crack first. I view that from the U.S. farmer standpoint. You're sitting in a unique situation right now where it's on the U.S. farmer to feed the entire world. Maybe Brazil's going to chip in. We don't know what their crop's like yet. It's on the U.S. farmer. So as we see crop prices continue to increase, if you look at the futures curve, they're not going anywhere, and inputs increase, you're still sitting at pretty tight margins. So I'm optimistic that the U.S. farmer will still consider adding on new solutions to bump yield if it's going to continue to open up that margin a little bit. But if margins are the same at low and high prices, you're inherently taking more risk as a U.S. farmer. If you're saying, I'm going to try this solution to try to bump yield, but if it doesn't bump yield on $8 corn, that's a really expensive investment. So I'm maybe a hair bearish on your question of where could this go. What's happening in the former Soviet Union right now is greatly dictating that.
How we take a look at that, again, this is all our own company, what we're talking about. So diversification is something that we are doing. We're into the shrimp industry now. We made systems that honestly is knocking the socks off of the shrimp industry. The little robotic controls of taking heads off, shells off, legs off, tails off, removing the vein at 4,000 shrimp an hour. Is our new system that was released about a year ago. And we were at the Boston Sea Market show this week, and it was a hot thing. You understand what we do is we try to understand the industry. What is going on in the industry? There has not been major innovation in the shrimp industry for many years. So when you go and look at the equipment that they're making the designs that they made from the 60s and 70s. And we have a machine now that you can selectively select what you want to do, sort it, size it, what process you want done, what processes you want done by size. So you can hit a given market. Okay. The dynamics of the robotics that we can do today of being able to put a shrimp this big in, take the shell only off of it, sort it over there, alongside of one that's this big, and do all of the processes to it, take the shell off, take the legs off, take the vein out, and sort it separately. No one has anything like that. We measure every single shrimp. So the industry is so stunned by this. I have one fun story with them. So there's two young guys that are third generation that came to look at our machine. And we were talking about how we can take the vein out. You know, you open the back to take the vein out of shrimp. But engineering does not. And he came to the show and we had a little laptop. And we were going to show him the process. And the two of them, these guys were about 35 years old, third generation, two families. And they were both like just watching it. And the guy came up with his eyes this big. I am not kidding you. And he put his hand up and he said, "You did it!" And so we pulled the vein out without opening the back of the shrimp. And when he saw that revolutionary solution to the industry, it was just it was just so fun to see.
That's a great story, right? And consumer expectation, right? Change and what that all means as well. David, do you have any stuff? Do you have anything you want to add?
I do, but I'm conscious of David always at last.
Okay, David, do you want to? So Minnesota kind.
You know, I think I'd add just from a little bit of a different angle to the question on how do we think about, you know, in this changing environment, the changing demands or needs of investors. One thing I'd say is when we were advising startups 1 and 2 years ago, when SPACs were really heating up, there was a real push to produce 5-year revenue forecasts with paths. Every tech startup was going to be a unicorn. And if you couldn't show a path to 800 million to $1 billion in revenue, you know, people said, "Are you serious?" I think what we've seen in the volatility recently is a helpful restoration of kind of a focus on near-term realistic growth projections. And so really thinking about some of the conversations we had earlier, you know, do you start in, you know, as a technology, you know, do you start with a focus on a particular crop system or a particular geography with a particular group of growers? Do you have a go-to-market that is scalable in a, you know, in a really sustained way, you know, that lets you demonstrate proof points, attract and retain acres, kind of bring, you know, solutions that can kind of grow steadily along. So, you know, I think we spend a lot less time now writing equity stories that are for $1 billion and a lot more time working really hard on what is the, you know, initial 1, 2, and 3 year growth plans to demonstrate real traction in acres under management. And I think that we'll continue to see as the volatility increases, you know, investors that are looking for near-term proven growth opportunities.
And I just add, you know, when you ask about is venture going to continue to investing into the food and egg industry at the rate that it has. I think the answer is yes. I think the things that are going to change are even a little bit of the things that will happen because of inflation, because of the current socioeconomic world, because of Ukraine, everything like that. And that one, valuations, especially the market depths or whatnot, we're going to see valuations are incredibly frothy right now. That's the hot word, right? They're really high. We are very focused on more Midwest type valuations where we're not seeing 25 posts and pre-product. We're seeing a lot lower valuations, but I think that if the market or if we go into a down economy, what will happen is those valuations will go lower. We will continue, like I can speak for us, we will continue to invest in food and ag because it's a great opportunity at that moment. The other thing that I think is going to affect investment in the sector longer term is exits. We haven't seen that many huge exits since just in general in food and agriculture. It's a lot easier to point to tech companies that can exit to a Google, to a Microsoft, and point at those for these huge returns. And so we don't yet, it's still somewhat of a nascent industry in that we don't yet know what these exits are going to look like, which I think will again affect valuation, affect the point at which people invest, right? Because if you're investing in a $5 million round, it's a lot different than investing in a $500 million round and thinking about the return that you need to get and the exit you need to see.
That's an excellent point, and that's a really good in terms of think about right, what is next for the thing, right? Yeah, how it positions itself against other industries and other sectors to make itself interesting, right, from that investment side, because we often hear right the returns in ag are much slower, right, but they're often consistent, right, or can be more consistent than tech. And right, is that interesting enough, right, to keep investment capital in the game? One of the questions, and we're almost at time here, but a point was made around. I think it was earlier today around. Right, we've got a lot of I think digital automation on efficiencies and I'd say production, right, overall, and just thinking right from your hats, where do you see the most need for digital and automation, right, within this whole value chain that we have? And is it more production and increasing supply? Is it efficiency in that messy middle of the value chain and transparency, or is it right more on the end with the consumer? How do we right just thinking about where is an opportunity space as people are ideating around this digital area that they might want to be thinking more about? David, maybe I'll start with you and go backwards this time. And you can add some closing comments as well, right? As well, because we're at time.
Shannon, I had a hard time hearing you on the question though, so maybe start with somebody else, and then I'll pick it up as we go.
All right, maybe I'll just turn it to Stephanie, and we'll work our way backwards there.
So actually, I think that one of the big drivers is actually going to be regulations. And I say that because we've talked about compliance and traceability for a couple of years now, and that's been a hot thing. And you're going to have to start tracing things because you are going to need to report right your results and what's going on. However, that the need for compliance has not actually been enforced. From my understanding, and now it's looking at they're going to start enforcing in 2023. And so my answer would typically be, I actually think there's a huge opportunity in actually solving traceability, because I think that's coming, and I think it's just going to be a regulated industry, but it's going to need the government to get in there first. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Not what I expected. That's great.
We've done an enormous amount of research in the shrimp industry. This is an industry that is just starting to mature. And 2 years ago, 300 ships were turned away from our shores because of either antibiotics or slave labor. So we are running on the wings of that. And there are a lot of small shrimp farms starting up. And there is a market for good, clean shrimp that is growing and growing. So really a lot of opportunity there, I believe.
Perfect. Thank you, Jim. Mark, do you want to?
Sure, I'll chime in. I would say anything in the supply chain with the caveat if it's consumer pull.
Yeah.
I just think it has to be consumer pulled. I think anything coming from inside the farm gate that is pushed to the consumer, if there's anything we've learned over the last 15 or 20 years in food, it has to be consumer pulled. If consumers don't care about single sourced ingredients, don't give them single sourced ingredients. So I just think agree, but just has to be consumer pulled.
Yeah, it's great.
Super good point, Mark. And David, if the question again was right, thinking about where is the most opportunity, right, in terms of a digital within the value chain, right, from producer to consumer, and just thoughts on where right disruption is needed or innovation opportunities exist.
Yeah, and lots of good answers there. I think one of the things, across the value chain is thinking more about B2B solutions. We've had a lot of conversations, even in today's discussion, around what can be, direct to the farm or on the field or on the acre. But there's a real opportunity for shipping and logistics players, for food storage, for new value chains in alternative proteins, for the new downstream markets. So I think about real opportunity to create solutions that are targeted at that B2B space, those helping farmers, to be more efficient in distributing inputs, and those helping on the other side post-harvest, and think we could see some real acceleration in those spaces.
Super, thank you for that. Panelists, thank you so much for your input and insight today, and thank you everyone for attending the session. Let's give them a round of applause.